High on a hill shrouded in mist lay a garden. It was a place of wonder, untouched by the passage of time. Flowers bloomed in vibrant colors, their petals kissed by the sun. The air hummed with the buzz of bees and the melody of unseen birds. This was no ordinary garden. This was a sanctuary guarded by secrets. At its heart resided Cael, the ageless gardener. No one in the village below dared to approach the garden. Whispers traveled on the wind, stories of its magic and the man who tended it. They said he possessed an ancient wisdom, a knowledge whispered by the wind and etched upon the leaves. Generations passed, yet Cael remained unchanged. His eyes, reflecting the green depths of the forest, held the weight of centuries. Some dismissed the tales as mere superstition. Others spoke of a curse, a price paid for immortality. But all agreed on one thing: the garden held a power beyond human comprehension. And within its enchanted borders, Cael walked, a silent guardian of its mysteries. He tended not only to the plants, but also to the delicate balance of life that thrived within its walls. The garden was his world, and he, its sole caretaker. He moved with a grace that belied his age, his touch gentle yet firm. He understood the language of the earth, the silent whispers of the wind, and the ancient songs of the trees. The garden was his canvas, and upon it he painted a masterpiece of life and beauty that transcended time. Down in the village, a young boy named Joren listened to these tales with a heart filled with curiosity. Unlike the others who shunned the garden, Joren felt an inexplicable pull towards it. He dreamt of vibrant colors and sweet scents, of hidden pathways and whispering leaves. One day, unable to resist the allure any longer, he decided to see for himself. He snuck out at dawn, his small hand clutching a worn map passed down from his grandfather. The map spoke of a secret path, hidden from prying eyes. Joren, fueled by his adventurous spirit, navigated the treacherous climb up the hill. Thorns scratched his skin, and his breath came in ragged gasps, but he pressed on. Finally he reached the top, his heart pounding in his chest. The garden lay before him in all its splendor, even more magnificent than he'd imagined. He gasped, his eyes wide with awe. He had never seen anything so beautiful. The air vibrated with a strange energy, a hum that seemed to resonate deep within him. As he took a hesitant step forward, his gaze fell upon a flower unlike any other. It shimmered like spun gold, its petals unfurling in the gentle breeze. He knew instinctively that this flower was special, forbidden even. He reached out, his fingers trembling with a mixture of fear and fascination, and plucked the bloom. A soft voice startled him. "So, you have found my garden?" Joren whirled around to see a man standing behind him. He wasn't what Joren expected. He expected someone ancient, withering like an old tree. But the man before him, though his hair was silvered and his eyes held the wisdom of ages, moved with a youthful grace. This was Cael, the ageless gardener, and his gaze held no anger, only a quiet curiosity. Joren stumbled back, fear warring with the wonder that filled him. He clutched the golden flower to his chest, unsure of what to do. He stammered, I didn't mean any harm. It was so beautiful." Cael smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling with amusement. "Curiosity is not a sin, young one. Come," he beckoned. "Let us walk, and you can tell me what brings you to my hidden haven." And so began Joren's lessons in the garden. Cael, with infinite patience, shared his wisdom. He taught Joren the names of each plant, from the common thyme to the rarest orchid. He explained their properties, their uses and their significance in the intricate web of life. Joren listened, his young mind absorbing knowledge like a sponge. He learned that the garden was not bound by the seasons. Here, spring blooms blossomed next to autumn leaves, and summer fruits ripened under a winter sky. It was a place where time flowed differently, governed by its own rhythm. And as Joren explored its hidden pathways, he began to understand the magic that pulsed beneath the surface. One day, as they worked side by side, Joren finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been burning in his mind. "Cael," he began, his voice hesitant, "why don't you age? Are the stories true? Are you immortal?" Cael paused in his work, his gaze drifting towards the horizon. A flicker of sadness crossed his features, a fleeting shadow in his ancient eyes. "Immortality is a heavy burden, Joren," he said finally, his voice low and tinged with melancholy. "It is a gift, yes, but every gift comes with a price." He recounted his tale, a story spun from moonlight and sorrow. He spoke of a time long ago when the world was young and magic flowed freely. He spoke of a woman, her laughter like the tinkling of a stream, and her eyes the color of the summer sky. She was his life, his sun and moon. She fell ill, Cael continued, his voice cracking with the weight of memory. The land was dying, poisoned by a darkness that seeped from its heart. To save her, to save everything, I sought the help of the Ancient Ones, guardians of life and death. The Ancient Ones granted his wish, but magic always demanded balance. They bestowed upon him the gift of immortality, the ability to tend to the land, to heal its wounds, but in return he was bound to the garden, forever separated from the mortal realm. He could never age, never die, but he could never again experience the warmth of human touch, the solace of companionship. Joren listened, his heart aching with sympathy for the lonely gardener. He now understood the sadness that lingered in Cael's eyes, the longing for a life he could never have. He saw that immortality, for all its allure, was a double-edged sword. As the days melted into weeks, their bond deepened. Joren's initial awe transformed into a profound respect and affection. He cherished the hours spent in the garden, soaking up Cael's wisdom and stories. He learned about the delicate balance of nature, the interconnectedness of all living things, and the importance of preserving the world's beauty. Cael, in turn, found solace in Joren's youthful energy and insatiable curiosity. The boy's laughter echoed through the garden, chasing away the shadows of loneliness that sometimes threatened to engulf him. Joren's presence reminded him of the beauty of life, the fleeting joy of each passing moment. They worked side by side, their hands moving in tandem. They planted seeds, nurtured seedlings, and harvested the bounty of the garden. Joren learned to identify the subtle signs of a struggling plant, the gentle touch needed to coax a wilting flower back to life. He discovered a passion for gardening he never knew he possessed. Their conversations ranged from the mundane to the profound. They discussed the stories in Joren's school books, debated the mysteries of the universe, and shared their dreams for the future. Joren confided his fears, his hopes, and his dreams to Cael, finding in the ageless gardener a confidant and a friend. Years passed. Joren grew taller, his features maturing, his childhood dreams replaced by the aspirations of a young man. He no longer snuck into the garden but walked through its gates with the confidence of someone who belonged. The villagers, observing their bond, whispered of magic and wondered at the friendship that bloomed between the ancient gardener and the young man. The garden, too, seemed to reflect the passage of time. While its magic kept it eternally in bloom, there was a different feel to it, a subtle shift in its energy. The trees seemed to stand a little taller, their branches reaching towards the heavens. The flowers bloomed with a renewed vibrancy, their colors more intense, their fragrance even sweeter. Through it all, Cael remained unchanged. Time, it seemed, had no power over him. He watched Joren grow with a mixture of pride and melancholy. He saw in the young man a reflection of himself, a kindred spirit who appreciated the beauty and wonder of the natural world. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garden, Cael called Joren to him. They sat in their usual spot, a small clearing surrounded by fragrant jasmine, and looked at the sky ablaze with colours. There was a solemnity in Cael's eyes that Joren had never seen before. Joren, Cael began, his voice soft but steady. You have grown into a fine young man. You have a kind heart and a thirst for knowledge. You remind me of all that is good in this world. A shiver ran down Joren's spine. He didn't know why, but Cael's words filled him with a sense of foreboding. He opened his mouth to speak, but Cael raised a hand, silencing him gently. My time in this form, in this garden, is coming to an end, Cael said, his gaze fixed on the fading light. The Ancient Ones have called upon me once more. The balance must be restored. Joren's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? Restored? What balance? Cael turned to him, a sad smile gracing his lips. The balance of life and death, Joren. It is the natural order of things. Nothing lasts forever, not even me. My time to rejoin the cycle is near. Joren felt a surge of panic. He couldn't imagine the garden without Cael. The thought of his friend, his mentor, fading away was unbearable. He wanted to argue, to plead with Cael to fight, but deep down, he knew it was futile. The garden, Cael continued, His voice, barely a whisper, needs a guardian, someone who understands its secrets, its rhythms, someone who will protect its magic and share its beauty with the world. He looked at Joren, his eyes filled with a deep, unspoken plea. Joren, will you take my place? Will you become the gardener? The weight of Cael's request settled on Joren's shoulders, heavy and daunting. The garden had become his sanctuary, his refuge from the world. But to be its sole guardian, to carry the mantle of its legacy, felt like a burden too great to bear. He looked around at the familiar pathways, the vibrant blooms, the towering trees that had witnessed centuries pass. He could almost hear Cael's laughter echoing through the air, feel the warmth of his presence beside him. The thought of losing all this, of the garden falling into disrepair, filled him with a deep sense of loss. He looked back at Cael, his heart heavy with a grief he couldn't express. He saw the weariness in his friend's eyes, the toll that centuries of immortality had taken. He knew with a certainty that went beyond words that Cael's time was drawing to a close. Taking a deep breath, Joren nodded, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, Cael, I will take care of the garden. For you, for the world, and for myself. A wave of relief washed over Cael's face, and for a moment his eyes shone with a familiar spark. He placed a hand on Joren's shoulder, his touch imbued with warmth and gratitude. Thank you, my friend, he whispered. You honor me. And so, in the heart of the magical garden, under the watchful gaze of the ancient trees, the torch was passed. Cael spent his last days sharing his knowledge with Joren, teaching him the ancient rituals, the unspoken language of the earth, and the delicate dance of life and death that kept the garden in balance. One morning, Joren awoke to find the garden shrouded in an ethereal silence. The air, usually buzzing with life, felt still, heavy with an unseen presence. He knew, without needing confirmation, that Cael was gone. He walked to their spot, the clearing where they had shared countless hours, and looked up at the sky. A single eagle soared overhead, its cry echoing through the stillness. Grief, sharp and piercing, threatened to overwhelm him, but Joren pushed it down. He had a garden to tend, a legacy to uphold. He walked through the familiar pathways, his senses heightened, noticing every subtle detail, every nuance of color and scent. The garden felt different, yet strangely familiar. It was as if Cael's essence had seeped into the very fabric of the place, his presence lingering in the rustling leaves, the fragrant earth, the gentle hum of life. And so Joren became the guardian of the whispering garden. He honored Cael's memory by preserving his legacy, tending to the magical plants and sharing its wonders with the world. He opened the garden gates to those who sought solace, knowledge, and a connection to something beyond themselves. He taught them about the delicate balance of nature, the importance of respecting the earth, and the enduring power of hope. Generations passed, and the legend of the ageless gardener lived on, whispered from one generation to the next. The garden on the hill remained a sanctuary, a testament to the enduring power of life, love, and the legacy we leave behind. And within its enchanted borders, Joren walked, the eternal gardener, his heart forever bound to the memory of the man who had shown him the magic that bloomed in the most unexpected of places.